Hello,
Hello.
and welcome to Planet Marzipan, the Fish and Marillion podcast. I'm Meza, and here's my mate.
Craig Houston.
Hello, and welcome to Planet Marzipan.
We'll start that again because I belched.
Oh, it's in. We're in. Belch is
Fine.
in. The folks know the level. Burpee Craig's here. I'm here. I'm Meza. We're back with Grae Tennick.
Evening.
I'm Mikie Kay.
Evening.
And we welcome back Neil McChrystal.
Even though
Hello. We are here. Craig's here to burp and pass wind, but we're here to discuss the Thieving Magpie album. But because it's Neil's first time on the podcast, and I think the story he's about to tell ties in with this album, we're going to ask Neil how he first got into Marillion.
okay, cool. So yeah, I think I'm a bit odd, and I got into Marillion through Fish's solo stuff rather than the other way around. So 1990, my mother goes to visit her brother in France and brings back two albums. She brings back Fish, Vigil and the Modest Mirrors and Steve Hackett's Spectral Mornings, both of which went on to create Slight Obsessions in her son. But yeah, Vigil was just fantastic, just absolutely floored me. You know, I'm 16, I'm in school, I hate it. And there's so much there that really resonated with me. So I guess first of all, I had to go to Season's End and decided that was rubbish because it had that terrible new singer on it. I mean, why would you want to listen to him? Quite clearly, I learned the error of my ways shortly thereafter. But at that point, I was very dismissive of Mr. Hogarth. So I went back and I started trying to find the earlier stuff. And my dad had Misplaced Childhood on a tape. And you know, if Vigil spoke to the 16-year-old, then Misplaced Childhood certainly did. And I was mildly obsessed with that. But having relatively recently got my first CD player, one of those kind of boom boxes with the flip top, I was trying to get some early Marillion on CD, and I'd seen this Thieving Magpie thing, which had the whole of Misplaced Childhood on it, which is amazing. But it also had this other disc of other stuff. Now, at this point, I'm not sure I even realised it was a live album, which is stupid when you look at it. It's clearly a live album, but I thought this is a great way of getting Misplaced Childhood, which I know I love, and an introduction to the rest of the stuff. So really that I pumped for getting a copy of that. And yeah, that pretty much was all I listened to for at least a year. And to be honest, to this day, the versions on that are in a lot of ways the kind of definitive versions in my head. So every time I hear Fugazi, in my head it says Sheffield Goodnight at the end of it. I could hear the little ad libs, the little extra bits. I'm always slightly freaked out when Fugazi split. You know, it doesn't fade over into the second section. So yeah, it really kind of set the scene for me of discovering Marillion. And then over the next wee while, slowly but surely picking up all the albums. And then when Brave came out, realizing that perhaps I'd made a grave error in misjudging this Hogarth chap. And went back and rediscovered Season's End and Holidays Need as well. So it was my first Marillion album.
Okay, wow. And when did you first see the band live?
94.
On the Brave tour.
On the Brave tour, yeah.
Great place to start.
Bloody hell, that's quite a baptism of fire, isn't it?
It is a bit, yeah. But it was Brave that changed my mind, because I'd kind of ignored Season's End, dismissed Holidays Need, and I picked up Brave, and it absolutely blew my preconceptions out the water, because I was almost annoyed. It's like, he's not allowed to do this. This new guy's not allowed to make this great record. It's just not on. And eventually got over that and went to see them on that tour. And yeah, I think I've seen them most tours since.
Yeah. And you still followed Fish, didn't you?
I did for a long time. I kind of stepped back a bit from the Fish world. Probably, I think it's probably the first time he toured Misplaced Childhood for probably its 20th anniversary. I think I kind of stepped back a bit from the fish world at that point, but yeah, I still followed him.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, welcome to the podcast. You
Thank
are
you very much.
more than welcome to be here. So we're talking about Thieving Magpie live double album, which came out on the 28th of November 1988. How old were you, Craig, on the 28th of November 1988?
Like Neil, I was the ripe old age of 16.
Okay, doke. Wow. But you didn't know about this, did you?
I didn't buy Thieving Magpie until early 1990.
Okay. Well, we shall start with our Wikipedia entry as we always do. The Thieving Magpie, Gazza, Ladra is a double live album by the British neo-prog band Marillion. It was named after the introductory piece of classical music the band used before coming on stage during the Clutching at Straws tour in 1987 to 1988. The overture to Rossini's opera La Gazza Ladra, which translates as The Thieving Magpie. The album was released shortly after singer Fish's departure from the band and was intended to document the Fish years. It complements the band's first live album, Reel to Reel, insofar as there are no overlaps. The Thieving Magpie is not a continuous live recording, but a compilation of tracks recorded at different times and places with audible gaps between them and different moods on the individual tracks. However, the double vinyl version does include the first side of the UK #1 concept album Misplaced Childhood, and the CD and cassette version includes the full Misplaced Childhood album as well as the track Freaks. The album was produced by Christopher Privet Hedge, who had been Marillion's sound engineer from early on in their career. Do we want to talk a little bit about how this album came about?
Go and relive your trauma, John.
There's only me that's old enough, isn't there?
No, it's
Oh,
not.
Grae as well.
No, it's not.
All right. Well, you tell us your side of it, Grae.
So, obviously, I've been in, as we've discussed on previous pods. It was since the second album, Friday Night Rock Club, getting all in. I was obsessed with the band. Bought everything. By this time, I'd left home. I was in Bedford at Manda College. My room was wallpapered with, the big bus stop and poster, and it was all Marillion. It was the Clutching at Straws. It was Fugazi. It was just that was my wallpaper in my room. Absolutely obsessed. Saw them in Hammersmith on the tour, and I remember sitting in the classroom. I think it was Kerrang! I read it in or something. I'd heard rumours that it was all falling apart. I read it in the classroom, and I had a tape that had Misplaced on one side or as much as I could put on one side and then Clutching on the other, and one of those auto reverse Walkmans. And I'd spent about 4 hours walking around just with those just on, thinking, what's going to happen to my life now? It's like, this is what the hell this is, because it was the band. I mean, I had other bands that I really liked, but this was the band that I was obsessed with. And I think, like a lot of people at the time, it was our band. It was something different. And like a lot of people at the time, and unfortunately like some people still to this day, I didn't think they could exist without having Fish as the singer. And that wasn't because he was solely important to the songwriting or what have you. It was his delivery and his character. To me, that was part of what the band was. It was devastating. It really was absolutely devastating. It was the first time I think I'd felt loss for something that I had absolutely no control over. It was really quite weird.
Yeah. I mean, my story, I think, folks, if you've listened to the podcast for a while, you've heard this story, but it was announced on the Friday Rock Show by Tommy Vance. I didn't hear that. On the Saturday morning after the Friday Rock Show, I got the train from York to Liverpool to go to the Royal Court to buy tickets for the then upcoming Christmas shows. And I got to the box office and the guy said, the gig's off. Fish has left the band. and I just walked around Liverpool for an hour in absolute disbelief. But pretty much the same as you, Grae. It floored me. It really did. Although I never did subscribe to this "they can't carry on" thing.
No, I don't. I mean, I just think in my head it was a case of how are they going to replace. It wasn't that they can't do it. It's like how are they going to replace it? Who are they?
That's it. You know, it was a weird time because if you'd followed them for a while, this album was celebrating everything that had gone before.
Yeah,
and that I mean, it was EMI getting the last of the band, last of the cash from the band, really. But it was a strange time. When was Hogarth announced? Was it February 89?
February 89, wasn't it? Yeah.
February, yeah.
Yeah,
It wasn't long. I mean,
not all that sort of not knowing what's going on.
but to be fair, it was a very short period of time because what we've discussed before on the pod, everything of this was all condensed into a very, very short period of time. So officially, between Fish leaving in September, and it was only a year away for the new album coming out.
Well, they played Fife Aid in July, on the 23rd of July, and then Fish left the band in September, and then in November you've got a double live album coming out.
And I think you need to remember as well. So I mean, they were. We've discussed this previously. When I was people don't realise just how big they were at that point. Between Misplaced and Clutching, they were riding on a high. They toured with Queen. They'd filled out stadiums themselves. They were a huge draw.
Yeah,
and we knew that there was work going on. We knew that there was a work going on already for a follow-on to Clutching. So, and all of a sudden, it was a case of that's not working. We're done. And you're like, sorry, what?
Yeah.
So it was mixed with. I think the album itself for me was that kind of double-edged sword thing where you're like, I really, really want to hear it because we hadn't had a full live album. Obviously, we'd had Reel to Reel and was Brief Encounter. When was it? Was the double package released before that?
No.
It was after, wasn't it?
Brief Encounter was an American.
Yeah.
EP.
And then we had Reel to Reel, and then they released the Reel to Reel and Brief Encounter after this, wasn't it?
That was a reissue.
That was a reissue thing. Yeah.
Yeah, 92 or something was it?
So we've not had anything.
Yeah.
And it's really quite interesting that we didn't have anything more than Brief Encounter, than Reel to Reel at the time, because the bootleg industry was certainly profitable.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, the only thing that would had in 87 though was Live from Lorelei, but that wasn't out on any other format apart from video.
It was just a video at the time, wasn't it? Yeah, it wasn't available as an album.
There's no CD or anything that came out until after it was re-released with a video and CD compilation thing together, but that was in the early 90s.
Mm.
Yeah, the VHS and CD combo wasn't until much later.
So, this album was recorded at various locations, as the Wikipedia entry says. Edinburgh Playhouse in December 87, Sheffield City Hall in March 84, Hammersmith Odeon in January 86. I think that's it, isn't it?
Yeah.
No.
Mannheim for Freaks.
Mannheim for Freaks, 21st of June 86, and Chelsea Mondays from Leicester de Montfort in March 84 as well.
Well, so it is.
What do you just as a group? What do you think about the album having fade outs between the songs?
I'm very, very similar to Neil with this album. When I got this, I played this a hell of a lot because I loved the dynamic versions of the songs on here. The fade outs and things like that. I was like 17, 18. I didn't really care that much about it. I just liked listening to the songs, and I think, like Neil, it was some of them were my definitive versions of the tracks, and I really loved the live version of Misplaced. So this was on like massive rotation for me when I was a young fan of this.
Yeah.
But I think as a piece of work as it is, it needed to be what it was. it needed to showcase songs from different tours and things. It was a summation of their career with EMI in the live skip. So I understand why it wasn't just an album from one particular tour or from one particular venue. I get why they did it, and it made sense to me. In my head, it makes sense, and it's why they did a similar thing when they came to do Made Again.
I mean, I bought it in the spirit of it being a compilation. So, I treated it like that. That was how I received it, was a compilation. It just so happened to be live recordings.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think some of the fades and things are a bit jarring for me. And I know what the album is and why it was put together in the way it was. And for anybody who was craving genuine live recordings issued by the band and the record company, this was gold dust. It was what was needed. But I do think a proper producer's magic, just to polish it, if they'd had time to do it, would have made it sound a lot better. I mean, I have very strong memories of Craig playing me this, way back in the early 90s. But I must admit, I've never possessed the album and never liked. And because I was massively on board with Hogarth Marillion, and we were later treated to, beautiful pieces of work like Made Again and much, much more following. It never really threw any interest for me. So it wasn't until literally a week ago that I actually played this album through from start to finish. I have played bits of it before.
Sorry, how did you get on here?
Well, I was wondering that myself.
Nepotism.
So here I am at the age of 52, and it's passed me by. It just never held any interest for me. But there's some really, really, really strong live tracks on here. And I think if you take out those niggly little things like that could have ended a little bit sooner, they shouldn't have had that fade out, if you take that away, it is a wonderful collection of live versions. And my favourite track out of this whole package is actually Jigsaw. And anybody who knows me would just go, what? It shouldn't be, but I'm not a great script or Fugazi fan, but this version of Jigsaw
why are
is
you here?
absolute. Again. But yeah, I think it's absolutely brilliant. I think that's if like me, you've poo-pooed it in the past and just gone, but this year alive, it's all a jumbled mess. It's actually more coherent than you think it is. And like I say, there's some wonderful versions on here.
Yeah, I found it flowed better than I remembered it when I was listening to it, like the week leading up to this. Because although I had the fond memories of it, I think over time you get slightly polluted by other people's use of it, and there is this perception that it's a bit of a mixed bag and it's a bit all over the place. It's what I've not listened to for a long time. So yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. But no, this actually flows better than you remember it.
Yeah. Did you have it on cassette, on CD, on vinyl?
It was CD back then. As I say, I just got this CD boombox.
Oh, beg your pardon. Yes, yeah.
Double box case, which was very swanky, and it probably cost me about 3 weeks pocket money. Yep, that's the boy. Because I really didn't get into vinyl until quite a bit later. So
right. Go on, Grae. What do you think of it?
So I don't understand why they didn't put the non-misplaced tracks from Lorelei on CD1, because they had a gig there. They had a gig there that would have flowed, and they could have done, rather than having the different nights and the different bits from different years.
But then they got criticised for rehashing stuff that we just bought.
Yeah, which they've done for the 4 years.
It's not come since, but at the time, yeah.
And I get it though, because if you think about it, so, the earlier stuff is from '84, so it's nearer the time it was fresh. It was still being performed. You've got good audience responses. His voice is.
I tried my best. I'm in the crowd.
His voice
in the crowd at Sheffield.
Yeah, I know you were at the Sheffield gig, but I'm gonna have to say, Mikey, you need to wash your ears out because I really don't like the version of Jigsaw on this. There is points where his voice is awful on it. He really cracks. I know. I'm probably one of the odd ones out, but there's points on this album where his voice is fantastic. But for me, Jigsaw.
I think, folks, we've said this before, but this could be the last episode of Planet Marzipan.
Oh, you guys have crushed your entire podcast.
Yeah, Neil, you've broken it. You've broken it. It's
Sorry.
not down to you, mate. It's not down to you. It's these two.
I think on that point, it's like I remember reading something about Camel's live record, and the original incarnation of that, not the one that they reissued a few years ago, didn't have an awful lot of rain dances on it, and that was because the record company didn't want to cannibalize sales of the then current album, which is Rain Dances. And I wonder whether there was a little bit here, because this is only a year after Clutching came out.
Yeah.
So got the singles and you've got White Russian, but if they'd shoved Worm Wet Circles trilogy on it, for example, I think that would have been like, you've now got a chunk of the current album on this and you'd have cannibalized sales of the studio album, I think.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, actually. And that's what I was saying. I understand that they've got the bits from the tours at the time. But I have to say, as Craig mentioned in the chart in the single, the sound, that I like the production of it. The band sound wonderful.
I said that, not him. I'm not letting him have that 2 episodes. I said that.
Okay.
It's got overdubs on it, this album.
Yeah.
And you can clearly hear them.
Which live album doesn't?
No, but as we alluded to in the single episode, I don't think there's that many overdubs on Misplaced. I think they ran out of time, would be my take on that. It's a lot less sharp and clear than the tracks that appear on CD1.
Yeah.
But it also depends on how many decent sources they had for.
Well, I think that's a big
recordings
factor.
as well.
If you're working on a short time scale, what gigs have we got available that are of a reasonable quality?
Because back in the day, it's not like now where, most bands record everything in every performance that they do to some degree. Back then, they didn't record anywhere near as much. So they just work with what they've got.
I did wonder that earlier on today when I was listening to it. I was looking at other live releases that have come out since of Fish Era Marillion. If you look at early stages and what have you, it goes 83, 84, 87. So 85, 86, which doesn't appear, apart from the Hameo gig for Misplaced, there's nothing else live in the early stages. And I think, was Misplaced box set with the 85 Utrecht, is that the first time we've had an official release from 85, 86? I don't think there's been anything else.
Yeah, I think so. There's Curtain Call, isn't there?
Oh, yeah, there's Curtain Call as well, sorry. Yeah.
Because that's got the early version of Misplaced shouldered on it somewhere, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, it's from
Yes.
the end of 84, isn't it? Yeah.
The end of 84, but I'm just saying, is there actually something Curtain Call from the
No, there's Curtain.
86 tour?
Sorry, the early stages have got the early version of Misplaced on. Curtain Call's got a Misplaced gig in it, I'm pretty sure. I'm
Right.
just going to reach behind
Gonna go
myself and
check.
break my neck.
The one thing that I did find with the Misplaced side of the album, so to speak, is that Kaylee sticks out like a sore thumb. And I don't know whether it was, I know that the Odeon gigs were recorded over the 9th and the 10th. So I don't know whether Kaylee was from a different night to the rest of it. But when it goes from Kaylee into Bittersweet, there's like a jarring gap and it just doesn't feel right. I wish they'd just flowed it from one evening's recording, to be completely honest with you.
Curtain Call's got a double CD, Hammersmith, 3rd of February 1986 in it.
So it has. Yeah. Yeah, I've got that somewhere. I need to get my CDs out again some point, actually.
What about the flow of the album then? The track listing in the order it is. So obviously starts with Thieving Magpie, but then into a cracking version of Slang.
It's a banging opening. And, speaking to Lucy previous episodes, a few episodes ago when we're talking about Leicester, she was absolutely over the moon with them opening with Slange, and she said they should open with Slange in every gig.
Yeah.
That meant a lot to me personally in Leicester, actually, because of the role this album has in my Marillion journey. You know, coming on to that was straight back to being 16 and discovering this band. It was phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a really punchy. If you go from top to bottom, it's a really, really hard-hitting set list.
It's a great set list, yeah.
I have to say, though, I think I agree with Neil. I'd rather have lost something like Script, and I would have preferred, like you said, like something like the Warm Wet Circle Suite in the, alongside Inky Mercado and White Russian. I think that would have been a better hook, but that's a personal gripe for me. I'm not really a fan of Script, but
I have to say, listening to Script today,
other than that, I think it's a banging list.
It's a great version of Script with Fish singing it without straining himself.
Yep.
It's great, and he sings it all the way through as well. The only thing to compare it to might be one of the marquee gigs in December '82, I suppose, or recital of the Script. But I'm glad it's there. I really am. I mean,
On Brief Encounter as well, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, you've got from Slange, you go on to He Knows You Know, then to Chelsea Monday, and I think this version of
from Sheffield.
I think this version of Chelsea Monday is fantastic.
From
It's
Leicester.
really good, isn't it? Yeah.
It's the Chelsea
Really
Monday version is really, really good. It's really, really good.
It doesn't actually follow. It doesn't follow a set. I know they've taken the Misplaced Childhood stuff out. They put the One Night in there, but the rest of it doesn't actually follow an order from any of the set lists from either of any of the tours at the time, does it?
No, I think
they've made it up for the album.
I think vinyl's probably a big factor as well. The 20-minute optimum time is probably
isn't the track listing order on the vinyl slightly different to the CD?
No, I don't think so. No,
Isn't
no, it's not. It's the same.
Those Chelsea Monday.
Exactly the same.
Yeah.
So I think the vinyl's is a big factor in the running order.
Yeah.
Was Script before Fugazi?
Sorry? No, Script is the first track on side 4.
Yeah.
Fugazi is the last track on side 3. So yeah, as Craig said, that's side 1, Slange, He Knows You Know, Chelsea Monday. Side 2 is part 1 of Misplaced from Hammersmith, January '86.
Yeah, so they split it differently on the CD, because obviously it's your CD 1 is like say all the tracks here, but with the vinyl they've got half of CD 1 on side 1, the side 2 and 3 is Misplaced, and then side 4 the rest of CD
only side 2's Misplaced, so they just put that in that first half of Misplaced in before they put the rest of the set list in. I mean, I think the reason I struggle with it is if I'm listening to a live album, I want the live album to be a live album and not have the breaks and the stops and the starts. So when I had the CD, if I'm honest, I bought the CD for a live version of Misplaced, and I listened to CD 2 loads. I tended to pick 1 or 2 tracks from the first CD to listen to because there was other ways for me to do it with bootlegs and stuff.
Yeah, so let's go through the rest of the tracks then, John. Where were you up to?
So side 3 is on the vinyl. This is Jigsaw from Sheffield City Hall, Punch and Judy from Sheffield City Hall, Sugar Mice from Edinburgh Playhouse in '87, and then Fugazi back at Sheffield '84. Side 4 of the vinyl is Script from Sheffield. There's quite a lot of Sheffield on there, isn't there? Incommunicado from Edinburgh Playhouse '87, and it finishes with White Russian from Edinburgh in '87. On the CD, as you've said, it's kind of side 1, and then they've got Freaks, and then we go to what will be side 3 of the vinyl. Some of you guys have got the records, haven't you? So like as I think we talked about previously, like Grae, I was into CD at that point, so I'd stopped buying vinyl, and like Neil, and we got the big sort of what is it? I don't know what
Double clamshell, isn't it?
is it not though? Is it? It's
Oh, it's not a double jewel case. Sorry.
It's a double
Yeah,
jewel
double
case.
jewel
yeah,
case.
the big double jewel case. Mine's with the sort of white inner,
Yeah.
but it came with a fold out poster and then a fold out booklet, which was effectively a cut down version of the album.
But yours is a white box. That yours is.
Yeah.
Mine's in the black box.
Mine was
But
as well.
But that was the same package format, apart from the posters and stuff, that Delicate Sound of Thunder had as well, isn't it? The BMI double.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
They were quite common, these big chunky doubles, were they, at the time? None of this saving space like going on.
That's like VHS box sets and stuff,
Yeah,
back in the day.
What do you think of the sleeve?
Mm.
I'm going to go around each of you. This isn't a free for all. Mikey, what do you think of the sleeve? Seeing as you've only seen it a week ago.
I saw plenty before then. It's bloody awful. No, don't like it. Don't like it in the slightest. It's a shame because I think the idea and the concept of immortalizing the band a la Mark Wilkinson is a fantastic idea. I just don't think it works, unfortunately.
Neil?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Mark Wilkinson. I'm a painter myself, and Mark Wilkinson was one of the artists that inspired me when I was a kid. And I've been able to tell him that, which was lovely. But is this his greatest work? No. I've got a funny feeling this was probably done quite quickly.
It was, yeah.
Quite cheaply. And, the time and effort that obviously goes into the work that he's done otherwise with Fish, the conceptual side of it, the symbolism, all of that stuff isn't here. It's very literal. It's like he's painted a picture of the band playing live, and it's a fine picture of the band playing live. But the depth and the complexity and the things you could spend looking for and looking at in the other sleeves that Mark's done for them over the years isn't there on this one for me.
Yeah. Grae?
I'm going to agree with Neil. If you compare it to the one that went before and the one that came after, if you're Clutching and Vigil, even the version of Clutching that was on the album, now we've seen the fully intended final version with even more detail. Mark Wilkinson's a phenomenal artist, and his cover art for all the various people he's done it for is just brilliant. This is a cut and paste of ideas. It's like, right, we need to make sure we've got all the elements from the albums in there. Let's try and do a photorealistic version of the band, but it's rushed. And was his heart in it? Probably not, because his relationship was with Fish. And I think he's quite honest himself and says he doesn't like the cover, doesn't he?
We've interviewed him about. We asked him about this cover.
Yeah.
He didn't have any time. That's the issue.
Yeah.
I think what this cover is it's the harsh realities of being a commercial artist. Sometimes you just have to have something done to a deadline, and other times you get the luxury of spending time with another creator to really realize their vision. And this is the former.
Craig, what do you think of it?
I think Neil's spot on there. I think it's the whole thing of it's art. It's not finished. It's abandoned. and this he was just restricted on time. He tried to get as much of what their vision was that he could, and it's.
So that is one of my questions, because I just wonder. So with the other covers that he's done, not even just the Fish and Marillion stuff, but your stuff with Maiden and other people and what have you. He's had a description of what they want, a concept of the imagery, a concept of the idea. I wonder if he got it for this, where it's just like, we want a live album cover for the band that shows the history, and that would be it, because that would make it much harder to deliver.
Well,
yeah, I think the brief from this came straight from the record company.
Yeah. I have to say, despite everything you've all said, I like it. I think in a 12-inch format, I really like it. It's not the best thing he's ever done. It makes them all look like they've been airbrushed within an inch of their life.
Because
Fisher's got a full head of hair, for example. What the fuck?
Well, that's a lie for a start.
That was a special request, I'm sure.
Yeah, it does look like it's been added at the
Yeah.
end.
Can you make me? So can you make me cod piece bigger as well?
I like it. I like it. I like the whole album package because the inner sleeves have got the pictures from each tour. So they've got the album sleeve across the top, and then pictures from the tour and from the time, one on each of the sides, which is really, really nice.
Yeah, the inners are nicely done. Definitely.
But it's the whole package for me. I didn't have this at the time. You know, the CD's obviously a much cut down version of this. Before anybody says, the picture in the middle is blurred, the live picture.
Do you think EMI will actually go back and do a definitive version of it? And
I'd
put
love-
misplaced on.
I'd love them to do it, but I don't think they will because they've already raided this for the Edinburgh shows come out as the bonus stuff for Clutching, hasn't it? I'd love to see the full Sheffield come out. I was hoping that would be the Fugazi bonus, but it obviously isn't. It would be nice for them to do a vinyl reissue and maybe over 3 vinyls, put the whole of Misplaced on it.
But let's say if they've already rated it, I think people will probably complain about being sold the same thing multiple times.
I think there's definitely scope for a Live at Lorelei reissue because it's never come out on vinyl.
Well, isn't that Tom Drums of that coming out at some point?
I don't know, but you've
Expanded
just
version.
started the rumour there.
Hopefully an expanded version.
I'll add that to your wish list of Brave live with an orchestra at the Royal Albert Hall.
I don't ask for much.
No, not much. And then Mikey's 15 CD box set of whatever album we've just discussed.
I just want a weekend dedicated to somewhere else. That's all I want.
Well, again, I think we'll add that to the same list because
Yeah, I think I'm on to plums. If they've not done it by now, they ain't doing it.
I'm with you, Neil, on that one. But it's funny. So looking at that, and if you look at the Marillion live covers that he's done since. So if you look at early stages, you look at Curtain Call, you look at obviously where he had time, you see what could have been.
yeah,
That's the thing.
but take it for what it is. He didn't have time. It was the whole thing was turned around in a matter of weeks. You know,
I like the crowd looks like really small at the front, they're like little dolly arms.
What,
They're
sorry?
like giants looming over them.
We were just kids.
That's me stood at the back. Probably I'm towering over everybody. Yeah,
We were just kids. We were just small.
That's my arm I'm looking from Sheffield. No.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we're lucky we got a Mark Wilkinson cover for this. To be absolutely honest,
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
a bloody photograph in the middle,
Yeah.
or worse. You know, given the, I don't know the details of what the machinations of the record company at the time, but it could have been a lot worse.
I'm surprised they had the time and the drive to do the overdubs as well.
Well, they did the overdubs in shifts, and Fish insisted that none of the band were there when he did his.
Yeah.
So make of that what you will. I think we probably need to do a full episode on Fish leaving the band.
That's going to be a happy one.
To do it
So
justice.
so which versions of this, apart from your vinyl and your original CD, have you got any of the other versions of it? Because it was reissued in.
I've got the Japanese 2005.
Oh, that's the little gatefoldy
That's
thing.
the miniature vinyl CD.
How much did you pay for that? Because I know they were expensive.
Oh, only about 2 and 6.
Because
It's weird because it's a proper vinyl replica, so the track list is for the 2 LP on the back, but the CDs have actually got the CD tracks on.
Because they released, was it the first 4 albums, reel to reel, and that on the Japanese, on the gatefolds, not yet. Yeah. Because
They're all
then
up
the
there. They're all up
yeah.
there.
Oh, because then they did a 2009 reissue of What year was it?
Well, I don't know. I need to check because this has got. Apparently, this is remastered. So they both got
Yeah, 22nd of June 2009, remaster.
right,
Yeah.
but they've both got 2005 copyright for EMI. So I think this Japanese one was the remaster, and then they've used it for the
reissue.
The reissue. So it was reissued in a slimline jewel case.
And
You've got that one, Craig, haven't you?
I haven't. I've only got the original one. I haven't got the. I didn't get the remaster one.
It's funny because I'm far more cynical now, and I mean at the time I used to buy anything that was coming out from anybody of the bands that I like. Nowadays, as we've discovered with the recent Dire Straits reissue, if it's something that's already been released and it's just a reissue rather than a remix or a remaster that does anything of value, I'm just not interested.
You've still bought it.
I bought the hard copy. I bought the hard copy.
Bought it. It arrived yesterday. You still bought it. Just so.
There you go.
So that's my versions. I'm sure there are others out there, but this is a big part of my love for Marillion, this album, and I've followed them since the beginning. But I really like this. It's a snapshot in time.
Do you not think that's because those gigs, or that period of gigs, that was the defining point? That was where you developed your relationship with the band. I'm not saying it was your favourite part of it all, but I'm saying that is where you became a fan of Marillion.
I think it's what Mikey was saying earlier. We just wanted some live stuff.
Yeah.
You know, Reel to Reel was great in its original form, but it wasn't long enough. And this gave us some more live stuff.
And considering they've always been a live band right from the beginning, and they've had such energy live, all the way through the career, that, we like live versions.
Well, as collectors, Marillion collectors, we're bloody spoilt for choice with live albums now, aren't we? But
especially in the last 20 years, yeah.
Yeah. And then if you look at the EMI reissues, the Warner's reissues, yet more,
They've been great, actually.
They've been really good. But there's no shortage of. I think almost every era of Marillion Live is covered in depth now, isn't it?
Yeah. Of course, and then especially if you were doing the front row club stuff and all that kind of thing, and you've got all that kind of stuff as well. There's so much to choose from.
I wonder if
we need front row club on vinyl now, don't we?
Oh, Jesus.
Start at number 1, work the way through.
Sorry, Neil, what were you about to say?
Sorry,
yeah, I wonder whether back in the 80s, the record companies perhaps saw VHS or even, dare I mention, Laserdisc as the way to put out live material. They maybe thought putting out a live album on a record was a thing of the past. And
yeah, you're right.
You did have Lonely. So, those were out there on those formats, and maybe there was a sense that now people don't want a live album on a record. They want to see it. That's the point.
Yeah. Fair point. I mean, they owned Picture Music International, didn't they, as well, EMI?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So that's how we got, the recital of the script and then on to Lorelei.
Yeah.
It was just always strange that it was never misplaced.
Yeah, there was 2 other quite big live albums in the charts where this came out, though.
I was going to say there's 3 live albums in the top 40, wasn't there?
Yeah, you've got Delicate Sound of Thunder, obviously. That was at 20 when they came in at 25. And Quasi live album from U2, Rattle and Hum, that was at 23 when they came in at 25. So, it's there was definitely a want for live stuff. But if you look at the charts that week, that it got to number 25, I think 5 out of the top 10 were all greatest hits collections.
Well, you're on the run of Christmas, so that's what happened at that point, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah.
Strangely, the only laser discs apparently that Marillion released were Recital of the Script and the Grendel Webb video EP.
Right. So they'd obviously bailed on that by the time we got around to Lorelei, hadn't they?
Yeah.
Because nobody bought the players.
No, nobody bought the players apart from karaoke machines. That was it.
So how do you look back on this live album?
I've not played it for years.
I think I was about to say that in the run up to this, we've all dug it out and haven't heard it for yonks, have we?
I thoroughly enjoyed revisiting it. I really did, and I think the energy. We can complain about the fade outs and complain about, recording a little bit, but just the energy of the play, and that it's just they were young. It was energetic. It was great fun, and I didn't get to see that era. So
did you not?
I don't
None
know
of that, eh?
Never mentioned that.
There you go.
They were good. You should have gone. Anything else to say about this fantastic live record?
I think I've just got. I think I might have an idea of why I struggle with it as a live album of the period. As someone who went to the gigs, sorry, Craig, John, you'll know a lot of the gigs. There was the storytelling in between the songs and the introductions and what have you. That's not on this. You don't experience this.
No, because it's kind of built for repeated plays, isn't it? Yeah. And I get that. That's what we love about the complete shows coming out is the bits between.
Yeah, and I think for me that's why I look. I mean, it's funny. I've really enjoyed all the other live material that's come out since. All the stuff that's got the early shows. It's got the Warner box sets and all that kind of stuff. They've got brilliant live sets. And I just hadn't listened to this until we started talking about, we'll do this podcast. And when I went back to it, some of the versions on it are brilliant, but I struggle with it as a gig. It's a collection of songs that they did live. It's not a gig, apart from obviously the CD2. And I think that's why I struggle with it, because if I want to listen to a live album, I want to listen to a show, and that's not what it is.
Yeah. I'll go back to this again because I'm bowled over by the quality of the stuff.
Yes.
On it, if I'm honest. Like you, probably pick a full gig off the shelf if I wanted to listen to live. But I'll pull this out again. I think this is really good.
I'm really surprised at how good it sounds. I don't know why, but I'm really surprised by how full and well produced about.
I mean, I do play this quite a bit. The vinyl record is really nice. I've actually got an American version, which is not a gatefold sleeve. It's in a single sleeve. And side 2, the misplaced side, is just banded as one track.
Oh, wow.
But other than that, it's the same. But, it plays really nicely. 20 minutes. I've said it on our Planet Music podcast. I've said it about 20 minutes aside vinyl. It's just nice.
I've really enjoyed revisiting this. It's, the unique place it has in my journey with the band, it kind of did all come flooding back. I think it's probably the first time I've listened to it in a decent stereo. I kind of wanted it to sound like it did in the crap old boombox. But yeah, it's flaws and all. It'll always have a special place in my heart because, as I say, it was my baby's first Marillion album.
Yeah, brilliant.
And it was the only thing we had for a long time as live, really. The only sort of other than the VHS stuff, it was the only album we had to listen to live material from Fishbit era for a long, long time.
Also, I'm just having a bit of a brain fart there as well about what Neil said, what he said just before about them releasing video releases for the live stuff. And Marillion, if you think the next live release from Marillion was Stoke Road to Ipanema with the De Montfort Hall gig, there wasn't an actual official live album until Made Again, which was 4 albums later.
Yeah.
So it was after Afraid of Sunlight. It wasn't until they were leaving EMI. Yes, you might have had a couple of the newly like Racket released official bootlegs, but you didn't have another official live album till 4 albums later. So that was a big long period of time where we were bereft of a live album.
But again, driven by the record company, like this one.
Yes. Yeah.
Both of those driven by the record company.
It occupies exactly the same niche. It's an end of an era collection with the mega conceptual masterpiece of the era strapped onto this too. It's kind of Thieving Magpie too, really, isn't it? It's Made Again.
It is.
Yeah. Same blueprint, isn't it? Absolutely. Would be nice to see that on vinyl.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I have.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But isn't this again? Hasn't that been mined a bit with the
Yes.
deluxes?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
the issue with this and Made Again. It's
It's
one of
the
the
entire
games
gig,
we
isn't it?
put out in their entirety now. So
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole Ahoy gig is out, I think. Was that a Front Row Club one?
oh, which what are you?
The Ahoy gig from Made Again. Because
Yeah.
that's a fantastic show.
The person who heard it first time a week ago
A week
now
ago,
going to tell us his
um,
final thoughts.
it's a very accessible collection of live songs from the Fish era. And I'll definitely be revisiting again. And I think if there's anyone who is listening who is very staunchly Steve Hogarth and very rarely visits the Fish era legacy stuff, I think it's well worth a dig out.
That's a great place to end it on, Mike.
And track one's fantastic.
Track one, yeah, Rossini. Yeah. So that's what we think of the Thieving Magpie. But we asked you what you think of the Thieving Magpie. And I have to say, Craig, this is the biggest response we've ever had to this, isn't it?
It's bizarre. It's like everybody in the grannies come out from under a rock or behind the curtains or behind the sofa. They're all chipped in.
Yeah, 9,500 people have seen the post. What?
And there's about nearly 120 nearly folk have commented on it.
Yeah.
So we're sorry that we can't read out everybody's post. Otherwise, it'll be like the episode will be almost as bad as the cover version episode.
And
Sorry.
full disclosure, we'd already recorded this episode when I asked you this. So apologies. It will become apparent why I've said that in a minute. But let's go through some of the highlights of the comments, Craig. Do you want to start with the first one, which isn't a highlight?
We'll start with the first one, which seems to be a common theme and also what we discussed. Kevin Bremner, worst album cover of all time.
Yeah.
It's not that bad.
I like it. I've said that, but there you go. David Beckworth says, "Hi guys, love it. I properly came into the Marillion fold after seeing Rocksteady with H and then buying Season's End. I've been aware of Misplaced Childhood and Clutching at Straws singles, but none of the first two albums. So as a post-student at the time, I bought the vinyl version of Thieving Magpie as a way of sampling the older material, which I loved. The 2 CD box set was acquired a little later. Shame the vinyl only came with half of Misplaced Childhood on it, and I'm hopeful one day that we'll get a 3 LP reissue of the full version of Misplaced Childhood included. And to bring it up to date, I picked up the Freaks 7-inch picture disc just last weekend. Nice one."
Phil Davies, never an album I've listened to much. Tainted by the split and always felt sad when I played it. Not as enjoyable as Reel to Reel. Somehow bloated and not as dynamic as their first live record. I remember Simon Bates announcing on Radio 1 that Fish had left the band. I didn't speak to anybody for 3 days after that. Seems daft looking back now, but I was absolutely devastated.
With you on that, Phil. With you on that one. This is why I've told you that we recorded the podcast first, because Guy Vickers said, "I think you're about to do a podcast about it." We just had that, Guy. If so, can someone explain how before Marillion kicked him out, he quit? Your mileage will vary according to your knowledge of the facts. Fish knew it would be the last time the band would play up here, as he announced at the start of Incommunicado. Over to James Levy. Very cryptic, all of that. I think the top and bottom of it, Guy, is we're probably going to do an episode about the split. I think it's such a big topic that we'll cover it and all the conspiracy theories in a separate episode to this.
Aliens. It was all to do with aliens.
It's the grassy knoll.
It was the grassy croft.
Yeah.
Rob Crossland, legend.
Hi,
He's
Rob.
on lunchtime, bless him. My gateway to Marillion. I bought this then, went to see Brave at Cambridge Corn Exchange. Changed my life. So that was a late join.
Yeah. Russ Parker says, "It was my first Marillion album, having bought it for Christmas in 1988. I had previously heard Clutching at Straws, however. Absolutely loved this album, and it's where I learned all the back catalogue of great songs prior to owning these albums individually. There's some fabulous live recordings here, despite the tracks being recorded in isolation rather than a continuum of a gig, and I've always loved the Gazza Ladra intro running into Slange, but the power of Incommunicado stands out as one of my favourites on here. It's strange how I've loved the cover on release, but over the years have come to find it awfully twee. Having said that, it's a fabulous painting in isolation by Mark Wilkinson.
Darren Moore, friend of the pod. Yeah, I stuck one in there.
You've done it again.
Well,
You're all
there's a
friends of the pod.
Contributor to the pod.
Yeah.
I like this one. At the time, I was an apprentice Sparky and used to travel around the country. I already had this on CD and then went and bought it on cassette so I could play it in the works van. It was played so much that my workmate Mike knew all the words and the in-between chat, even though he was never really a fan. That's a bit of Stockholm syndrome you think going on there.
Yeah. Martin Jakubski. Hi, Martin. Martin from Still Marillion says, I loved it when I came out, and I still do. When I came out, sorry, Martin, I've announced something there. Let me rephrase that. Martin says, I loved it when it came out, and I still do. It's a fantastic live document of the Fish era. Yes, I know it's a bit disjointed, as it's culled from different gigs spanning several years, and a lot of the vocals were re-recorded in the studio, but I don't care. It still sounds great to me.
Seamus Colgan.
Hi, Seamus.
There you go. Are you going to say anything about being friend of the pod?
What? He's
Legend of the pod.
He's a friend of the slot, is Seamus. A friend of, just for the record.
Says I only recently found a decent copy on Discogs that was reasonably priced and in decent nick. The cover is quite horrible, easily their worst from the Fish era. Yes, even worse, in my part of the word, say worser than Besides Themselves. Yeah, I don't like Besides Themselves cover. No complaints about the music, quality or selection. For me, it's a sweet souvenir of the era and belongs in any Marillion fan's record collection.
Cool. Dave Mitchison says, love that album. Had it on cassette, and it was the sound of my paper round for many months. David Moth says, didn't like it. It felt too disjointed. It was pieced together from different gigs and lacked the feeling of being at a gig. I much prefer the live recordings on the recent box sets as they were taken from single gigs.
Stuart Chandler. Bought when I was still distraught about the split, and it's coloured by that. However, some great performances, and I was thrilled to hear Misplaced live in full. That cover, though, cripes. Yeah. And Keith Pavitt, fantastic version of Chelsea Monday. Like I mentioned, it's an absolutely corking version of Chelsea Monday.
Yeah. Roddy Adam agrees. He says it's a great live album. My favourite on there is Chelsea Monday. I bought it on cassette when it first came out. There's a theme here. James Cassidy says, I've always hated the cover, which is probably why I seldom listen to it. And Richard Broadley says, I think I've only ever listened to it twice, maybe 3 times. Wow, Richard. Not because I dislike it, just the old so much music, so little time conundrum. Just seemed a bit ragged and too artificial with obvious studio-administered plasters.
Yeah. Paul Macmillan, a good collection of songs which bookends a point in the Marillion story. Many might have thought this was an end point for the band, but it was only a chapter close. Yep.
Okay. Apologies for this pronunciation, Bjorn. Bjorn Kobrugger. I was on holiday in Germany with my parents the summer of the release, and we rented an apartment. The owner's kid had the album on repeat, and seeing Fish with the Adler on his shirt made me think that Marillion was a German band. I was 14 at the time.
Yeah.
Graham Smith. Go on, you go.
Go for it. I'll tell you, Graham. I bought the vinyl when it was released. It was clearly a stopgap, but the whole package reeks of a quick cash-in by EMI. The awful cover art, the out-of-focus photo inside the gatefold, the flat-sounding production. My main reason for listening once or twice, then putting the album back on the shelf for years, however, is I was devastated by the split. I'd seen them every year since the Marquee in '82, and they remain one of the greatest live bands I've ever seen, and it took me a long time to get over Fish leaving. This seems daft now, having been a big sulk about a vocalist being replaced in a band I love. However, it's how I felt at the time.
Yeah. Simon Jacks says the best thing to come out of it was that Freaks got released as a single and was allowed the audience it deserved. It was a bittersweet experience listening to the album. Sad times, but something to celebrate too.
Paul Shopland, wonderful album, second only to Alchemy by Dire Straits in my list of favourite live albums.
Cool. On a similar line, Stim Rhodes says, like Queen Live Killers, you know it's been tinkered with, but so what? It's bloody great.
You know, it's funny, I never really liked Queen's Live Killers album.
What?
For some reason. I know I do it, just never.
I'm sorry,
Was it-
folks, the podcast is over. I can't work with it. What the fuck?
I just never.
What
I
the
really
fuck?
did it. It's just one of those things. I'm allowed to do some random admissions, and this is a random admission.
Planet Marzipan have split up due to musical differences in that his ears don't work. Fucking hell.
Anyway, as we bring this podcast,
Jesus Christ. Back to the topic in hand, not your crap hearing.
Stephen Ash, prefer reel to reel, and the cover artwork is appalling.
Okay. Carl Whitmore says, killer album. Heard this round a friend's house and it was my gateway to the Marillion universe. I absolutely loved the artwork and had a huge poster of it on my bedroom wall. I didn't much care that for some of the band members it only bore a passing resemblance.
Paul Welton, I found this album disappointing at the time. My feeling is that it is difficult to capture the feel of a Marillion concert on a live album, unlike other bands. Looking back, it's important that this moment in time was at least captured.
Yeah. Darren John Tozer says, would love to see this and Reel to Reel reissued on new vinyl. It might happen, maybe a Record Store Day release. Great suggestions, Darren. I'm with you.
You know, Warners, they'll just do something random.
Well, we were talking offline, weren't we, you and I? You know, I think there's certainly mileage in a reissue of Live at Lorelei and this album and Reel to Reel, and maybe made again on vinyl. That would be great.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it's a collector's market at the minute. But to be fair, it's been a long time since they've done anything for Record Store Day.
Yeah, true.
And there's never been anything on Record Store Day big. I mean, you had the Grendel 12-inch picture disc, you had a You're Gone thing. Was there like a version of Fear that came out?
Yeah, there was a
Record
gold
Store.
vinyl version of Fear, yeah.
But it's just been very sporadic.
It's still got El Dorado on it, though. Hi, Lucy. She's not listening to this, I'll tell you now. Stevie Jones says it was rushed. It was a rushed out contractual filler after the split. The poor artwork reflected it. I didn't like it much on its release at all. It just didn't capture the magic of them. On the flip side, Tony Evans, great memories, as at this point I had Reel to Reel and a shed load of bootlegs on tape that I got under the counter from a bloke on Oxford Street, and many bootlegs on vinyl. So it was nice to have a later official Fish era live album to end on.
Yeah, he's under the counter. So if you got that live Marillion album, yeah, love that. Also, if you got the Bros album as well. Darren Armitage, the first CD I ever bought. Loved it at the time. Never played it now though. Didn't realise about the overdubs. So again, this is why I've a push to revisit this one, because I hadn't played it in ages as well.
No, as we said in the main pod, I don't think any of us had, but the first disc sounds wonderful. It's overdubbed to hell, but so what? Even Live Killers is, and that's a good album, isn't it, Craig?
I suppose I better go back and re-listen to that.
I think you
hadn't I?
probably had. I think that may be a candidate for Planet Music.
Ooh, another
That's a
queen.
whole other subject. Simon Knowles says, love the tracks, was disappointed that it didn't feel like a full concert. All the fade outs made it less special.
George Hash says it's a masterpiece, and David Dobby, but not our David Dobby, a different David Dobby. This album is just a masterpiece. And Frank Finday, can't pronounce it. I apologize. My pronunciation is, as you already know, awful. See the Leicester weekend episode. Fortunately, carelessly put together without any sense or reason. The only good thing is the cover, which is completely different to what everybody else is saying. But there we go.
Yeah. I think it's a real mixed bag. I mean, this is probably why we've got so many comments. Folks either love or hate this. But you know what we think, and now we know what you think. If you're interested in seeing the full list of comments, it's all in our Facebook group, Planet Marzipan. And if you'd like to suggest some ideas for episodes, that's the place to go. We also have lots of other people posted in. Some of the tribute bands come in and post about what's happening with them. So it's a real sort of community. So thank you very much if you're part of that and you contribute. And thanks for your comments on this. I think it's back to him and me, innit?
Yeah, and we're not split up for Giffade.
But Live Killers, oh my God. All that remains to be said is thank you to our guest this evening. Thank you to Mikie Kay.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you, mate. Thank you to Neil McChrystal.
Thanks, guys. It's been a blast.
Thanks, Neil. We'll love to have you back on any time. And thank you to Grae Tennick.
Thanks for having me again.
Thank you. Thank you to the boss, Craig Houston.
Oh, don't get Lucy will be on about that again.
He's not the boss, listeners, but I just have to tell him he is.
Keep it sweet, is that what it is?
Yeah, yeah. Thanks to you for listening. We've been Planet Marzipan. It's good night from me.
And it's good night from him.
Take care.
And stay alive. Hey. Thanks for listening to Planet Marzipan Podcast. Please like and subscribe from whichever platform you get your podcasts from. You can contact us at planetmarzipanpodcast@gmail.com and check out marillion.com, fishmusic.scot for all